in this video, we are going to look at 7 activities you can use to teach your students about Day of the Dead. Let's jump right in. Hey, it's Ashley, aka Señorita Spanish, where I provide easy to use resources to save you time and energy while you prep for your Spanish class. If you're new here, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content that I create for you in the future. And links to everything that I mentioned in this video will be down below in the description box. Let's get started. I think Dia de los Muertos is a great celebration to include in our Spanish classes. Depending on where you live, students might get this idea of it being Spanish Halloween, and we know that that is just not the case. But they don't, so it's nice to teach them about it. In this video, I'll share 7 activities you can use to educate your students about Dia de los Muertos, the history, the practices, where it was, where it came from, and what it looks like today. I'll also share some resources to help you compare Halloween and Dia de los Muertos so they don't confuse the two anymore. They can make the distinction between these very separate holidays that just happen to fall around a similar time of year. Have you taught Dia de los Muertos before? Yes or no? Comment below and let me know. If you have taught it before, just type yes. So before we dig into the different activities, I want to talk about how I use them in classes and how you might be able to use them in classes. I've used them with 6th and 7th grade exploratory classes as well as Spanish 1 students, and that's just a mix of high school, so freshmen through 12th grade students. I've used them as just like one activity during class. I've used them as stations in a very directed and structured group, and I've also used them as stations where I just set them all out and said go and let my students kind of explore and work between all of the different activities. What you choose to do for your classes will probably depend on the classes that you have, the students that you have in those classes this year, and the space that you have available. One of the activities that I like to do with my novice students around this time of year is listen to the song Chumba la Cachumba. It's not Dia de los Muertos specific, but it's really kind of like seasonally feeling because of all the skeletons dancing around, and it's super comprehensible to novice ears. So whether you're just doing a listening and kind of jamming along to the video, if you're listening and having them fill in the blanks with what they hear and you're providing a word bank for them, or if you do some sort of listening activity and they respond to comprehension questions, there's lots of different options for things that you could do with this song. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to link the one that I like to listen to most. It's right here on YouTube. And the art, I think, is really fun for them to watch too. You know we can't have stations without including a reading activity. This reading activity is in English, and it talks about the importance of calaveras and calacas during Day of the Dead celebrations. It helps to kind of explain to students, like, why are there skulls and skeletons everywhere if it's not Halloween? Like, what do these symbols have to do with the celebration? And it talks to them about how it's not scary. It's really not meant to be terrifying or like woo kind of deal. And so it talks to them about what these symbols have to do with the day and where they came from. After they do the reading, they're going to do some comprehension activities. Another reading activity I like to do is about the history of Day of the Dead. I think it's really important for them to understand the roots of this celebration and how Indigenous and Spanish cultures have kind of mixed together to form the celebration that we see today. So they read an article and they talk about the pieces of the celebration and where they come from. Next, I am not an art teacher like at all, but this is probably my favorite art project that I've ever done with my students, and I do it year after year after year because it's really simple. All of my students have always been able to come up with something that looks good, and it's not overwhelming for me to teach as a not art person, right? Really not artistic. So what it is they learn how to draw a calavera. It has all of the little steps and pieces for them, but examples for them to put their own twist on it. I love to hang these up and make a classroom display when they are all done. One of the biggest pieces of Dia de los Muertos celebrations are the ofrendas, and these can be really confusing to students because they maybe haven't seen anything like it before, and so understanding what all of the elements on the ofrenda are is really important to understanding how Dia de los Muertos is celebrated. So we do a labeling activity here. I give them an ofrenda that has little markers on it, and they read about each of the elements and they put the pieces on the ofrenda where they belong. And I like to do this as a hands-on activity where they're actually physically labeling it, but in the past I've also had to do this digitally just, because of lack of time or needing to cut the pieces out, or, maybe we're doing distance learning at some point in time for whatever reason. So while I prefer to cut and have them do this physically, it's also easy to do online. Another resource I like to use when teaching about Dia de los Muertos is that little short film with a girl and her mom. You've probably seen it. It's adorable and beautiful. So we watch the film and we talk about what they understand from the film and what the film can tell us about Dia de los Muertos and the celebrations. We also talk about the emotions that the little short film causes them to feel, right? Do they feel sad? Do they feel scared? Do they feel happy? How do they think the little girl feels and why? There's a lot that you can do with this little short clip. I mentioned at the beginning of the video how it can be a common misconception for our students, and sometimes they're grown-ups, to think that Dia de los Muertos is really just like Spanish Halloween. So sometimes I like to do a little bit of a compare and contrast activity where they take information about Halloween, information about Day of the Dead, and they split the two up to where they go. So they're reading a bunch of little facts and they're sorting it. Okay, is this Halloween? It goes here. If it's Day of the Dead, it goes there. Depending on the ages of the students, sometimes they can do this as kind of a Halloween and not Halloween sort of sorting, where they then realize, oh, these things are Day of the Dead. And sometimes it's nice to do this as kind of a wrap up at the end of doing all of the other stations to say, okay, now take all of this other information that you've learned and let's compare some of our own practices and traditions. I also just wanted to note that sometimes we have parents that just don't want their kids to learn about this celebration for whatever reason, and I always want to be respectful of their parents' wishes for their students' learning. However, sometimes you get those requests and you're like, oh, it's just more work. So I wanted to give you some ideas for alternatives you can give your students without creating a ton more work for you. Option one would be to do a little report on a different holiday or a different celebration. I have a free download I will make sure to link for you in the description of this video, where students would research, learn about, and then give you the report on a celebration or another day in the target culture. Another option could be to send your students on a virtual field trip, and this could be related to a different celebration. It could be related to a specific country, up to you. A third option would be to just do a report on a famous Spanish-speaking person, and this could be somebody that they choose, this could be somebody that you choose and you assign. Either way, it's something where you're just going to say, here you go, this is what you're going to go do. You're going to go to the library, you're going to work alone, and you're going to use the resources in the media center to help you complete this while your classmates are learning about this other topic. Either way, I have several free resources you could use in a pinch, and I will make sure to link all of them in the description of this video for you. There you have it. There's 7 activities you could use to teach your students about Dia de los Muertos, and some backup plans just in case, because you never know. If you liked this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows you liked it, and if you didn't like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. Don't forget to click subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content that I create for you in the future. Oh hey, also, if you found this video helpful, would you consider clicking that share button and sending it to a Spanish teacher friend who might also find it helpful? Thanks! Do you have any other activities you use to teach your students about Dia de los Muertos? If you do, you should send me a DM over on Instagram and let me know what you do and what you thought about these activities and if you think you're going to try them or not. Okay? I can't wait to hear from you. Bye!